Hey there, and welcome this afternoon to our live stream. I'm super excited to have you join us today. I'm Angela Brown with Savvy Cleaner. I'm the CEO of Savvy Cleaner. It's a training company for house cleaners and maids. We've been in business for 3 decades, and we have cleaning companies that we've worked with all around the world. Now, one of the things that's most interesting about the cleaning business, and this is not the main part of the cleaning business, but a huge part of it, is the move in and move out cleaning. And so I'm super excited to be a part of today's show, which has several realtors with us today. And we also have a renovation expert. Now, this is kind of behind the scenes, and I'm super excited to ask lots of questions today because a lot of times homeowners don't know what they're supposed to do to get the most amount of money for their home. So today, I'm going to have our guests introduce themselves, and then we will get into our question and answer. And if you have any questions and answers, you can leave those in the links below because we have a team on staff that's going to come back. We're going to come back every day for the next several years, and we're going to check in on your questions and we're going to answer them for you because we want you to sell your home fast. And every home that you sell, we want you to sell it fast. You're going to have to fix it up. You're going to have to clean it up, and you need the right realtor in place to do that. Okay. So thanks for joining me today. And I'm going to spin this over to Erin Brown, who's a realtor out of San Antonio, Texas. So Erin, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and how you're doing and what's going on in your market.
This is 14 years in business for me. And real estate does not operate without really savvy cleaners and without amazing stagers and home renovators. And so I'm over the moon today about having this conversation with you guys today. And I know there's a lot of fun questions. And so I'm really looking forward to it. Can't wait.
Awesome. All righty. And over to you, Brooke. I do like over here like this because she's over here on my screen.
Hey, everybody. I'm Brooke Bryant. I'm a realtor in the Charlotte, North Carolina area. Been a realtor here for about 11 years. And like Aaron, I'm so excited. One of the first questions when you're listing a house, when you're talking to somebody about listing a house, what do I need to do to get the house ready to go on the market? So I'm so excited to have that conversation today. Things have changed a little bit, changes from buyer's market to seller's market. So this is always good information to have.
All
So super
right.
excited.
Welcome, Brooke. Welcome, Erin. And now, welcome, Katie Edge. Katie, tell us a little about yourself. And you're in the San Antonio market as well.
I am. So Aaron and I are in the same town. Nice to meet you guys. My name is Katie Edge. I'm the owner of Renovation Sells San Antonio, and we specialize in cosmetic renovation. I'm not talking about makeup. We help to give a facelift to a house so that it can sell for top dollar. Houses usually that are in a not ready state, maybe they're builder's grade, maybe they're outdated. They're going to sit on the market for a little while. They're not going to command as high of an asking price. But if you get a property fixed up, if you get it cosmetically renovated, you can do it not only pretty quick, but you can spend a little and you can make a lot. So that's what I help realtors to do in the San Antonio area.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Now, my question is for Katie today, and I'm curious to know how you got in the renovation market because that is not a typical business and it's kind of a unique specialty.
No, it's not. So I'm actually a former corporate America gal, did that for about 17 and a half years. Always had the entrepreneurial itch and just never could. I was too big of a chicken to walk away from a big salary. But somebody called me and asked me if I would be interested in learning about franchise opportunities. And I was like, sure. Stumbled across several different ones, but this one, as soon as I heard about it, I knew it was for me. Everybody, if you ask them when they're older and they say, what would you tell your former self if you could? And they'd say, get involved in real estate. So I always knew that I wanted to be involved from that side, but didn't know how to get started. And so when Renovation Sales came across my desk, it was the perfect opportunity. I believe I'm franchisee number 10. So I got in early, really learning and growing a lot with a new company, but teaching me so much along the way. And it allows me to capitalize on things that I'm really good at personally, which are relationships, people, project management, which is what my MBA is in. And I like herding cats. So renovation falls under all of those.
Yep. Well, that's fantastic. So I'm curious, what are some of the common mistakes that people make when they get ready to go to sell their home and they don't either know what to look for or they think, oh, I can wing it on my own and do my own home repairs and they don't know what they're doing. What are some of the common mistakes?
Girl, I've seen it all, but people get too personalized. So one of the things you have to think of when you're selling your house is it needs to be a blank slate. You just need to be able to, any person with different tastes needs to be able to walk into that house and say, I'm just going to bring my toothbrush, like it's ready to go. I don't have to do a thing. I think right now the market, and Brooke, you've been doing this for a while, so you've seen all kinds of different markets. But right now, with interest rates what they are, nobody wants a project. So it really does command that you do some things to get it in a make-ready state. And that's going to help motivate people to buy it, right? And help motivate people to give you that higher asking price. But the things that I see most often are picking the wrong paint colors. Paint matters. Sometimes people just think, oh, like they don't have a designer background and they will pick interesting colors that maybe speak to them, but they don't speak to the average bear. So neutral things are really what we look for so that, again, anybody could envision coming in. Sometimes they think they have to spend a whole lot more money on things that don't matter. I had a homeowner once tell me that we needed to do things in her laundry room. And I was like, girl, nobody cares about your laundry room. Okay. What they care about is your kitchen. They care about your master bath, and they care about paint neutralization. So a lot of times it's just unique preferences from a homeowner. I've had at one house once that we saw literally, you guys, a tree in the middle of it. I kid you not. They had
In the house?
Yes, ma'am. They had constructed this house. Literally, there was earth in the center of it, and then a beautiful, what do they call those? Glass. Oh, they're really big in the 70s. We have like a skylight. There you go, beaming down. So I've seen some interesting things, but again, just personalization.
Was there a roof over the tree?
There was a roof.
Yeah, there was a roof. It was in the middle of the living room, but it had a skylight above it, sort of so the light could shine down on the tree.
So I have so many questions. How,
Yes, yes.
do they just cut the tops of the tree so that it doesn't grow taller through the house? I mean, like structurally, if the roots like start growing big, like does that like buckle the bottom of the house? I mean, like
These are all questions I have as well, Angela. All questions I have as well. Luckily,
so there are no answers. It's just questions.
Yes, there are no answers. In fact, they had a little makeshift sort of garden situation happening around it with pebbles. I mean, but again, personal. It takes a special kind of buyer to want to buy a house with a tree in the middle of it.
With all of the strangeness that goes on in people's houses, how do you stay up with the current trends and what's happening in the industry?
So I'm not a designer and I'm not going to claim to be, but what's great about what I do is that it comes with a designer touch. So every property that we look at for Renovation Sells, when we get a signed contract, I'll do a Matterport of the property, a 3D scan, right? So that my designer can be in the space with me and he will pick all of the selections for things that are readily available, sitting on the shelf. Supply chain issues are real right now. So if we get too hung up on a light sconce that it's very particular, it might not be here for a few months. So our designer team will assemble something, design boards that the client will then approve that we can then go get installed very, very quickly.
Smart.
Yes.
It's smart.
So I'm curious how in the changing market, I know right now the market is changing a lot and it's going from, I think it was a seller's market to a buyer's market.
Yes.
How do you stay up with those changes to help the buyer get the most for their money?
So right now, what I do is more critical than ever. A year ago, I would have asked somebody, hey, do you want to do some pre-sale renovations? And this is back when, you could put a tent in your backyard and we would have had like multiple competing offers. Really didn't open houses. You didn't have to have them. They were just for taking like the highest offer. So back then, I think, I don't want to sound bad, but agents who weren't doing what they needed to do were probably just getting away with selling it in an as-is state. And what I did wasn't as critical. There was still money being left on the table, right? Because if you don't get a property fixed up, you're not going to be able to command that same sales price, but you didn't have to do it to get it sold. Right now, we're seeing properties sit on the market for months and months and months, and then getting lowball offers. So time is an issue. Definitely what I do right now is more critical than ever.
How do you determine what renovations you do on a home once you end up getting somebody who decides that they need to make some changes?
So it's really a conversation that I like to have with my realtor partners, right? So I would ask Brooke or Aaron, I'd say, hey, what's the house worth right now? What do you think you could sell it for in an as-is condition versus if we get it fixed up, what are the comps looking like in the neighborhood? And even then, you may not have something as pretty as what we can do. So we'll just kind of take your guidance, your expertise as a realtor and figure out what that range is. And then based on that range, let's establish like, hey, we don't want to spend more than X. And then what can we do for X? Usually we focus on the kitchen, we focus on paint neutralization. Flooring can be an issue depending upon the property, but we really look at what does the neighborhood command? What does the neighborhood ask for? I have a property that we're getting ready to start on Monday. And in this particular community, the spread wasn't too different on an updated property versus a non. So we ended up keeping these silestone counters. And guys, they are hunter green. But you know what we're going to do? We're going to do paint on those cabinets to help neutralize, because even the comps that are selling for top, they all have the same countertops. You kind of have to work with whatever the neighborhood is asking to make sensible recommendations. And that's really more of a conversation rather than a playbook.
Gotcha.
When you're meeting with a client, how do you keep up with certain things? So do you try to keep the house as on trend as possible? I mean, I know some things are trending, but maybe aren't going to have a good longevity. So do you try to guide your client that way? I know it's going to be more for who buys the home is going to enjoy these finishes more than the seller does, but you try to guide them to do something that's not really super trendy, but that's going to be a little more evergreen.
Yeah, we do try to really, the focus for us is neutrality. So we're not going any two in one direction, right? Because we're getting this house fixed up so that it can sell. So my guidance is usually we use a lot of light colors. If we do a pop of color, it might be on like an island or something like that. But our designers are going to stay up to date with kind of whatever the latest and greatest is. And we'll play on something that is beautiful and elegant, yet simple. The only time you might see any crazy patterns or anything like that might be in a really high-end powder bath. For some reason, that's like a thing. It's the expectation. But aside from that, we really do. And maybe occasionally, you know, in some just a regular powder bath, we might have a more elaborate floor tile or something of that nature. But for the most part, we want to keep it really safe, because the goal is that anybody that walks into that house can visualize themselves moving in. And they can say, even if maybe Benjamin Moore Moroccan red is their favorite color, that they could paint those walls. They just have to be able to see it safe enough. So that's kind of the philosophy we stick with.
So walk me through the process. If, for example, I was getting ready to sell my home, for example, and I live in San Antonio and I need your service, I don't know exactly what to ask you for. What is the process of you taking me on as a client and us working together?
Well, Angela, you're not going to know about me. Your realtor is going to tell you about me. So your realtor is going to have already had a conversation with you to say, you know what, Angela, I think there's some things that we can do to really help capitalize on the equity that's sitting in your house. And I think if we do some things, that we can get this house sold for a lot more and that I can move it much quicker. But I'm going to bring in an expert of mine. She's going to help us to sort of assess and make some recommendations. You might have already had a conversation. Let's say Brooke is your real estate agent. She might have already had a conversation with you to explain that like houses right now, you know, that look like yours are maybe selling for $350. And that if we get them fixed up, we're seeing comps that like might even command a $425,000 price. And so when I'll come in, I can help to reinforce that conversation and explain these are the types of things that we do. We paint cabinets, we install counters, we change out hardware, we change out lighting. Maybe we look at flooring. We can easily replace carpet because carpet is cheap and can be installed really, really quick. So we give them tips and tricks like that. And then we focus on the places we need to focus. So depending upon the condition of the house, but you guys, kitchens sell houses. So a lot of times we're doing work in the kitchen because that's the heart of the home. So it just depends, but it's really a good conversation. And then it's up to the client to decide, do I want to do it or not? Some people are going to say, you know what, that's a smart investment. Let's do it. And other people are like, you know, I just don't have the appetite to live through construction. So we give them a chance to make that choice.
So, if I can jump in real quick, Katie, I know it's going to depend on the scope of the project, but what's your typical project time frame?
2 to 3 weeks. So,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty quick. So paint only. I did one the other day where this doesn't happen all the time, but a real estate agent called me on a Wednesday in a panic. He'd put a house on the market. The house was sitting and he'd gotten bad feedback. And he said, hey, what can we do? I think I got the bid to him by Saturday. And by Saturday, same day, we had a signed contract. We started work on a Monday. We finished the next Saturday and it was back on the market after a deep clean, photos by the following Tuesday or Wednesday. So that's an example of a really quick flash to bang. Typically when we go through our design process, which is really what separates us from the competition, we would do an estimate, sign the contract. Usually we'll have 1 to 2 weeks in there to order all the materials. We can begin, and then our average construction time is 2 to 3 weeks. So
When you say design process, walk me through that. What is your design process and what does that look like?
Yeah, basically, I'll give the estimate, and if we sign off on the figures, then I'll go and do the 3D Matterport, send that to my designer, and he will select based on what I've told him the scope is, right? We're going to do counters, we're going to do backsplash, we're going to paint cabinets, we're going to change out hardware, a faucet. So he'll put together a design board that incorporates all those elements, and then the customer can visually see what the footprint of that new property will look like. They'll sign off, we'll order it, and then we construct.
Wow, that's so cool.
It is designed for speed. You guys, whenever you are doing a project for somebody that's going to live in a house, rightfully so, they want to personalize it, So they want to mull over their decision. They want to think about, oh, I want to look at this sample in the sunlight. What does this wood floor look like here? Or they're going to want to go shop, at a tile shop and visually look, and they're going to call you and say, I don't know, Katie, I don't know if this goes with this. But when you have somebody that's going to sell it, their focus is return on investment. Let's make money and move on because I'm going to buy another house. So we're able to go much quicker when we do it for somebody that's selling because they're moving on. They're moving to another house. So it's a much different process. And that's how we're able to bring in a designer and to go faster and for it to not cost a fortune because we're doing it for sellers.
So what tips would you give to somebody who has a really tight budget and they're trying to spend as little as possible? Because I don't want to say, be a Scrooge about renovations, but there are probably a lot of people that don't have the resources up front and are hoping that the home sells for a lot so that they get the money to pay off some of the stuff. But if they're on a really tight budget, how does that work?
Budget and priorities, Angela. I say budget and priorities. Give me your one to end list of all the different things that you want to do in your house. What do we need to focus on first? If I can only do one thing, what's that thing? If I can only do two, what's that next? And then basically, where does the line get drawn? And that's what we do. And then I would call in somebody like yourself to do a massive deep clean, especially on some icky carpets, to do what we can with what we have, right? I've seen, I do have a great cleaner that I work with that she'll come in behind me and just make some amazing things happen. So sometimes just a deep clean can help solve some problems too.
And so is primarily what you're doing the paint? I know you'd mentioned backsplashes and, some tile and countertops and stuff like that. How big is the scope of what you do? And then what is like the smallest amount that can be done?
So I have done a project for $1,000 and I have done a project for $257,000. I have literally done everything in between. The $1,000 job was a texture only. I had a gentleman who was in a very high-end home and he just loved texture. He had brought in someone who was like an artist to put this plastic stuff on the walls. I mean, it looked really cool, but it was super personalized. So we literally just, resumed his walls back to a knockdown texture, which is standard for new construction here in San Antonio. And then the $257,000 job was on a house that was originally valued at $5 million and valued at 5.75 when I was done with it. So we do all kinds of things. Texture is a big thing here in Texas, and that's kind of regional. Brooke, you're in Charlotte, so I don't know how you guys feel about wall texture, but we love it in San Antonio. So we do a lot of that too.
Is there a reason for the texture? Is that just a regional thing or is there a reason for it?
Well, there is a reason for it. So texturing hides all your imperfections, your foundation shifts. So if you have a level 5 skim coat, which is super smooth, it is very, very beautiful. But the second that you get any kind of slight shift, you get big cracks. And so whenever you have texture, it kind of hides that a little bit more. But some things are just style too. Erin, you can attest in Spring Branch, we love stained concrete floors. There was an orange patina that was like really in, I don't know, like circa 20, 30 years ago. And you still see a whole lot of that. And so sometimes as a design team, it is, you're constantly thinking of, okay, especially if the budget only allows you to go so far, what can I do to make this go away? Right. So we do the very best we can given the elements that we have to work with. And, the budget kind of tells us what we can and can't do.
So when it comes to budget, do the banks cut the family a loan? Does the homeowner's insurance pay for it? Do you work from, money that comes in after the sale of the home? Like, how does that work if somebody wants to do a big project and the money is still tight?
Well, it's a great question because nobody wants to pay for it, right? I'm selling my house. Why would I spend money on my house? There's several conventional ways we can do it, but the easiest way is through our finance program. So I offer a $50,000 finance program where the client has to pay no money out of pocket. They have to apply, so you have to have decent credit, decent debt to income. But basically, you can apply on our online portal. It will immediately render what you are approved for out of the 50,000, and then you have access to the funds the next day. And then I go on my end and I'll request payments and draws as we do construction and per the terms of the contract. And then whenever we're done, and when I finish my construction, they've paid the final payment, I'll click a little button, and that's when the 6 months starts. And the client has 6 months to sell a renovated home. Most people will take their proceeds at closing and they will immediately pay it off. So they're not paying anything out of pocket, and they can retrieve not just the money they invested, but a whole lot more. So for people that do it, they're putting extra money in their pocket. And then, of course, the real estate agent benefits too, right? Because if you sell a house for more money, more commission.
I'm curious then. I know if you, this is just a finance question there, because I love the option that you have that you make it available to them. Would it make sense then? Because I know like however many times your credit is drawn or whatever before you buy a house, that then that affects your buying the house decision.
It would be, Angela, if it were a hard credit pull, but it's not. It's a soft credit pull. So it does
Oh, I
not
love
affect
it.
does not affect your pre-qualifications. So you can go and buy the house of your dreams. And until that 6 months that I mentioned is exhausted, it doesn't hit your credit. So
Okay.
you're good to do all the things and you can still buy the house you want.
Or your debt to income, right? It wouldn't affect your debt to income because it.
Nope.
That's great.
Kind of like when you get an engagement ring and, no payments for whatever. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming something like that. Or furniture, maybe furniture.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
something like that. Same thing.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. Okay, cool. I was trying to figure that out in my head. Like, how does that all work? Okay, awesome. All right, so
We have answers. We have answers, Angela. So glad you asked.
well, and I have so many questions. So, is there a project that you ever started where there, besides the one with the tree in the house, where there was a real challenge that you and your team just ran up against, like resourcefulness issues? You're like, oh my gosh, we got to put on all of our creative hats, all of our resourcefulness hats. We got to make this work, but how?
No, I mean, change orders are constantly happening because once you start doing things, the homeowner might say, oh, well, what about doing this? Or what about doing that? We kind of have like scope creep issues. But, sometimes too, you're just never going to get it perfect. Even the house that I mentioned that we renovated that was worth 5 million before and 5.75 when I was done. The client and I had discussions about, should I replace all of the almond colored switches in my house? Because when you paint walls white, almond colored switches really stand out. And the solution to that was staging, So you can't do everything. So you have to spend your money where it matters. You have to put it in the right places and just make smart decisions because nobody's looking for a perfect home. If they wanted a perfect home, they build a new build. But more than likely, all the things that would make it quote unquote perfect are probably out of most people's price range. So you have to get it in a condition to where you can give them something really beautiful to look at, like a brand new kitchen and some white walls. And a lot of times that can solve a majority of the problems that you have.
Okay, so and I've got my head stuck on the finance thing that you had and the money and all that stuff. Is it better then to call you? Like, let's say that I knew I was going to sell my home in the next year, but I wasn't quite ready to sell it yet. Does it make sense to wait till the last minute and have you come in and do the final last minute touch ups, or does it make sense for me to hire you now a year before I put it on the market to make sure that the house is ready, and then whenever I get that last minute whim, like, oh, today's the day I sell my house, boom, I can just put it on the market at that time?
Depending upon the scope of work, I usually ask my realtor partners to bring me in a couple months before. That way we can have the conversation. If for whatever reason it's a bigger project, it might be 2 to 3 months. But no, don't contact me a year in advance because then you're just going to live in it. And then you're probably going to scuff up those cabinets and especially if you have kids or pets or whatever. So we do want to get it prepped and ready right before it goes on the market. So 2 to 3 months out is a great time frame. And sometimes too, like I walked a house with a homeowner the other day for a realtor partner who had a friend that was going to sell in a year. And they just wanted to understand they were handy. And so they said, hey, some things are going to be more than what they can do. Other things are going to be things that you can do. But I gave her a list. I walked the house and I was like, you need to paint this. Turns out she paints cabinets. She was like, I painted these cabinets. I'm like, they look great. You should paint these over here too. So little things that they can do, maybe swapping out ceiling fans and lighting fixtures and things like that. But other big heavy lifting things will come back in, but it's going to be months and months down the line.
Gotcha. So how do you handle disagreements? I'm sure that just like any business, I know this is true in the cleaning business, where you have a
Sure.
customer that at first they're like your best friend, and then as the project continues, things kind of like are not quite When money gets involved, usually the attitude changes a little bit. How do you handle disagreements with customers?
And just like anything, it's about relationships, it's all about relationships. So the first thing I try to do in my business, just as I'm sure my realtor partners on the line here do, is I try to establish rapport and understand where they're coming from. But I want them to feel like I'm a friend, not just a business partner. That softens things. So when people can get upset, they're not going to talk trash to you, right? Like they would if you were just a business affiliate of theirs. So I definitely try to build that connection in there. But, if something happens and something goes wrong, you got to own it. You got to say, I'm so sorry about that. We're going to take care of it. And here's how we're going to do it. We had one project where we had a house that had very interesting paint colors in it. I kid you not, the trim had olive green in it throughout the house. The backsplash had red, gold, olive green, kind of a khaki color. Like it was a lot going on, you guys. And you think painting cabinets only is a pretty simple task, but not in this house. The way that the color that we selected, our designer selected, because of the lighting and the fact that it didn't have much natural light and the bulbs that they chose, it didn't look right. And so as soon as the guys saw it, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I need to call him. So I had to call him and tell him, your cabinets are the wrong color and we're going to repaint them. It's at our cost. And that's what we did. And it meant their house being off the market for a little bit longer. This was one where the house sat on the market for 4.5 months. We came in, did some things, and it had to extend out for a few days. But you know what? That's okay. We took care of it, and we managed the situation. And if you set expectations appropriately, that's the best you can do. So it's all about relationships and saying you're sorry.
When you're dealing with, like you, Angela, cleaning someone's home or selling someone's home, when you're involved in someone's home, it is personal. There are feelings involved, and the relationship really is so important to work on.
This is the number one thing, right? That the biggest purchase that people
Yeah.
ever make in their entire lives, there's a ton of emotion involved in it. And
Right.
especially in situations where, grandpa's lived there for 30, 40, 50 years, it's hard. And so, they want to, it can feel like their baby at times. So you have to just give them that dignity and understanding and let them know that you're also there to help them transition to the next place, because this is just
Right.
getting your house sold. We're trying to move on to the next one. So
Right.
just being a compassionate human. That's all.
What are some of the misconceptions that homeowners have about the process of working with you? Do they have these wild expectations, or is it just managing expectations from upfront?
All about expectation setting. And I'm pretty direct. Construction is messy, you guys, especially if we're going to be painting stuff everywhere. I prefer an unoccupied house. That's amazing for me, but it doesn't happen every time, And so you have to contend with people who are living in it. They have young children. I'm just going to be real, right? Like this is going to be a mess. We are going to need to do a deep clean after we are done. And then also telling them too, expectations with, timelines and if something changes, then just being willing to, to flex and to accommodate as needed.
Have you ever done one of these renovations and the seller says, love it, gonna stay?
Sure has. Yes. That actually happened. That actually happened recently. And the realtor was very graceful about it. And I'm like, you are going to hire me again. But yes, it has happened. Most often they stick with it, but it is emotionally charged, especially for the people who've been living there. Maybe they raised their kids there and their kids are gone now and those type things. But yes, it has happened, Brooke.
Yeah, thought so.
Yeah.
So if somebody doesn't have a realtor and they're doing a do-it-yourself sell, like for sale by owner, how would they get in touch with you? And what is the process if they don't have a realtor to recommend them to you?
So usually they're not going to know about me except through their realtor partners. Realtors are really the ones who see the value in what I do and tell their clients, hey, you might be in need of this. You can find us on the internet, renovationsells.com. I'm your San Antonio girl, so you can find me there. There's actually somebody in Charlotte, my buddy Will Brooke, that you need to reach out to. He's phenomenal and he's in your backyard. But yeah, definitely go through the website and then we can discuss. First, I like to have an initial call just to kind of understand what your house has going on, what the values are in the area, maybe chat with the realtor and then schedule an appointment to come out and take a look at it.
And when you do a walkthrough with a customer, I know as house cleaners, we have our own little walkthrough system where we have a standard operating procedure and we follow and we come with a little checklist and all this stuff. What does yours look like when you do a walkthrough?
Well, mine is not a checklist because there's 18,000 different ways that we could do it. So I just have the homeowner take me on a tour, and the realtor and I will kind of discuss like, hey, I see these are some things I'm seeing. What were you seeing? Now, I probably already had a conversation with the realtor before I walked in the door to understand what the recommendations were. But
Okay.
still, we have that conversation, up front with the client. If I see cracking in the living room, for instance, obviously, we're going to tackle those types of things first, but it's really just a conversation, and every property has different issues going on.
But if I'm understanding correctly, instead of the homeowner doing all of the repairs, like the nail pops and the cracks in the walls and fixing the little door stops behind the doors, and maybe there's a small piece of like baseboard trim or something that has been warped by a door that had rain leaking in or something. Instead of them trying to do all those do-it-yourself home repairs, is this the kind of stuff that they could call you and you would be able to take care of those things for them, or do they do need to do that stuff first in order for you to come in and just add the last minute flair?
Well, it depends on the client. So, I am not a handyman service. So, if they're looking for like handyman repairs, there's probably somebody else who can get it done for them more affordably. I am good at making old look new or making builder's grade look fancy. So, I am really somebody who's going to turn it around with beautiful design and make it market ready. Now, that being said, we can incorporate some of those type things, in it, right? Maybe the dog tore off the weather stripping, or there's scratches here, or the kids did XYZ. So we can certainly incorporate those things. But if all they're looking for is handyman, there are probably better service providers able to help them out with that.
Oh, I'm so glad I asked that question. That really
Mhm.
clarifies things for me. Thank you so much.
Of
Well, this has been
course.
so much fun. Thank you so much. Tell our listeners where they can go to find you and learn more about your business, and any questions that maybe I forgot to ask, how they would get in touch with you.
You got it. www.renovationsells.com/San-Antonio. And you will see my mugshot right there. Feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate this. This was so fun and educational at the same time.
Yes. Well, thank you guys for having me. It was a lot of fun today. I appreciate the opportunity.